thank you very much for coming. As you know, we are applying for a $5 million increase in capital, and we just wanted to know if you had any questions to start off with.
I do. I actually have a couple questions. I wonder, like, what's your company's cash flow situation like?
Okay. First of all, our cash flow is pretty stable. We generally have about 10% cash on hand. Right now, we're applying for the loan for a specific reason so that we don't have to absorb that 10% cash flow in order to facilitate expansion.
Okay. And what's your market share? I was looking over at your competitors, and they're pretty strong competitors, and I'm so just curious.
Yeah, and as you know, there are, the market is saturated with a lot of providers, but right now we're a local option. We probably account for anywhere between maybe 8 to 12% of market share in this county. Mm-hmm. I'd say in Illinois, we probably maybe hold 2 to 4%, and nationally, we're hoping to, move our operations so that we get into a percentage or two nationally. We are, as you know, we're competing with some very large players, and that's our reason for expansion.
What does your company net? Because you're asking for a rather large loan.
Yes, we have our company normally. Did you receive our financial statements?
I did.
Okay, so our net is about.
Well, actually, we kind of go on a percentage. We fluctuate, and I think off the top of my head, our net profit margin is currently between 7 and 14%. It's been 14% right now because we have expanded into the level of our current plant and assets. However, we think that as our plant and equipment, as that starts to expire, we're going to need to position ourselves so that we can continue operations and maintain that growth.
Yeah, my next question was going to be like, how will you use this investment? But I think you answered that.
Okay.
Very
Well,
well.
and we'd like to be specific about that. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Would you like to expand on that?
We are trying to use some of the money to buy more machines, so it would increase our productivity. And we're going to try to use some of the money to pay down some of our other liabilities. And when we increase our productivities, that means we can get into more market and different markets.
And would you focus your activities in expanding your base in this county, or expand in the greater Illinois area, or nationally?
In the greater Illinois area, because I feel like right now we are really in this market and this local market, and we're doing well in this local market. We don't need to saturate this local market, so that's why we need to expand.
And would you mind showing me your operating budget, like have it sent over? In that, I want to see like what percent of your expenses goes towards ad sales, and what goes towards salaries. And that if you're going to expand, I take it you're going to need to have more ads in the Illinois area, in the Illinois state area, and I hope some of the money would go towards that.
And we would be happy to do that. And I'm glad that you mentioned the additional sales and salaries and things like that. Into what consideration, or into what area would those be? Let me rephrase that. Would these factors be used in order to demonstrate a strong operational budget? Is that the need for these?
Yes, I just want to make sure that if we give you $5 million, or what you have now with the 15 we've invested, that it's not like 10% is going to ad sales and a huge percentage is going towards salaries, and that you want more. We want to see that you're using the money to expand or get your brand name out there, not only for internal use, or I guess for internal operational.
And what sorts of what sort of a situation are you looking for?
I'm looking to see an increase in ad spending. In that you're saying you want to expand, and that's one of the easiest ways to get the name out there. And maybe an ad campaign of some sort. That's mostly what I'm looking for when asking for the operation budget.
Okay.
I also did a organizational SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunities, threats, and I find our biggest strength, like working with you, is our established relationship, and I think that's great. And we would like to continue working with you. Also, you being a privately owned company does help in that we can, if there are major changes that need to be enacted, we can worry less about the volatility of the market and the shares than we would have if you were a public company. But I do have concerns already, like with the amount of debt you're in already. You're asking for, we've already given you $15 million, and you're asking for a $5 million increase in your loan, which is a 33% increase. And so that does concern me, like in that it's a loan, so we do need to be paid back with interest. I do think we could probably give you the loan, but we need to, obviously, I need to go over the operation budget and go over all of that. But we would probably have to ask for a higher interest rate, in that we're opening ourselves up to more threat, in that if the stimulus doesn't go well or if you don't get the numbers you want, then we're back at square A, but $5 million later. So that's our major concern in this endeavor.
All right, and if you would look at our, seen our financial statements, you can see that we are paying the $15 million loan every monthly in installments and meeting our current needs obligations of the loan.
I know, that's why I feel that we can give you the extra $5 million, but it's just, could you handle that extra interest?
Okay.
Is there something?
So I have a question.
Yes.
Because we do have a $15 million loan with you, would the $5 million roll together with the 15, or are you going to treat the two loans separately?
I think it probably makes the most sense to combine it into one larger loan, in that we don't want to have like you using one loan to pay back another loan. Just to think of it as one entity might make it easier for all parties in the end.
Would you mind if we used a portion of the loan to reduce some of our debt liability?
If that's like,
If needed.
if needed, yes. I wouldn't encourage it, in that we don't really want to give you more money to pay back other creditors, in that like that's just basically us paying back another creditor, because if you default, then we're liable a little bit. So if it's necessary, yes, for like the financial stability of the company, but it's not something we would be thrilled about.
And will you work with us to communicate your expectations on that?
Yes.
Awesome.
We have previously met with another banker, and they talked about a primary and a secondary and a tertiary thank you, source of repayment of loans. Can you explain that a little bit more for us?
And tell us your expectations
Yes.
on the repayment.
With our expectations of the repayment is what you've been doing so far, which is paying the bills on time, like paying them in full. I wouldn't. What did the other banker tell you to do?
It was a primary. It's a various ways to repay the loan.
See, I wouldn't get involved in that, especially how well you guys are doing now, and that right now you're paying us back on schedule with all our conditions met, and
Well, this is what we're doing. Primary repayment is where we're using current capital and assets. So currently we're using about 80% of our cash on hand, maybe accounts receivable and stuff like that. Secondary repayment is liquidating assets, some of the less liquid items, plant and assets, or
Accounts receivable.
some of the longer term stuff. And that's secondary repayment. Tertiary repayment is when that repayment is guaranteed by a third party. So we've been using exclusively, kind of 80% primary, 20% secondary. What is your?
I would stick to primary, or as much as you can to primary, in that when you're liquidating your assets, that's something you can no longer get revenue off of. So as much as you can, I advise you to stick to primary.
Okay, great, cool. Would you explain some of the key ratios that you're looking at? Tell us sort of what they mean and what why those are important in your determination of creditworthiness?
The most important ratio I looked at, I think, was what your cash flow is, and all, like how you're paying back your loans. Also, the 33% increase in the loan was a big deal to me, and that was something I took into heavy account. In that, looking at your net gain, net profit, it's like, and then comparing that to the extra debt you'd be taking on, I think it made sense.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. Do you have any other questions for
I
us?
think you've answered all my questions.
Okay. Do you mind if we keep a copy of your questions?
Sure.
Okay, we'll take those back
Yeah,
and.
I wrote on all of this.
Okay. Well, you tell me what.
The list of my questions are in this
okay.
form.
All right.
And then these are just some of, when I did your SWOT, I wrote the strengths, the threat, the opportunities and the threats.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Would you care for any feedback?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I've got. I want to say that the questions that you asked and the factors that you look at are very strong. Excellent. Now you did sort of, keep in mind that this is sort of a role play,
Yeah.
and we're a corporation. So, you gave us a laundry list of kind of the things that are important to you.
Mhm.
You forgot our relationship.
Yeah.
So we're thinking, our.
Really not gonna get this
Yeah,
phone,
if we
and
get
we
this-
need to talk to someone else.
Yeah, if we get the same rate with another bank, then I would say presentation. Don't get me wrong, you know your stuff, but that's part of the interaction.
Yeah.
The other thing too is you did good SWOT analysis. I thought your credit analysis was good, but the way to communicate that is by knowing your ratios.
Okay.
People aren't gonna know what you're thinking, and the ratios are the way to communicate that. So I asked you specifically to explain some of those key terms to see if you were solid on your ratios, and it's looking like that might be a weak area.
Yeah.
However, your concern with the amount of debt, awesome. Now we should ask you, if we had more time, I would ask you to be very specific on our loan restructuring options.
Mm.
So lucky for you, we don't get to do that. So, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts is I do agree that you kind of forgot that we have a
Yeah,
relationship. I also have a little for the question of the primary and the secondary. You really didn't know where to go with that, but you really, if I didn't know what it was, you really played it off really, really well. And you didn't get unnerved when you didn't know. You just went on your gut, and it's so good to not get unnerved when you're in this role play or anything.
And this is tough. You don't have facts, you don't
Right.
have figures, you don't have specifics. So
It's
you.
my first time.
Oh, you did really well
Excellent,
for your first
excellent.
time.
So I just want you to be aware of needing to be solid on those.
Yeah.
Not just to know them, but it is part of what is involved in communicating
Yeah.
what's important to make decisions.
I have one other point. We had sent you the financials. If we know we really didn't send you the financials,
Yeah.
you're supposed to act like we sent you the financials.
I tried to change like halfway through.
Yes.
Like when I
Yes.
talked about
Yeah.
what was your net worth, then talking about your net worth.
Yes, yeah, we done that. Yes.
So we do have another appointment, but I want to say it was
Thank
really a
you.
pleasure. Thank you,
Thank
Elliot.
you.
Thank you.
Elliot
You did
Snyder.
awesome.
By the way,
Thank
you may want to have business cards and make some connections because you're going to do pretty well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.